Van Gogh Designs.
A name synonymous with elegance and timeless beauty. We marry style, color, and texture with furnishings that complement your home. Offering a wide range of sofas, chairs, beds, and accessories, we'll ensure the highest standards of quality throughout. From custom design pieces to our existing collections, we have furnishings you'll enjoy living with. Van Gogh Designs, the art of comfort.
ਕੀ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਐਕਸੀਡੈਂਟ ਦੇ ਕਾਰਨ ਪਰੇਸ਼ਾਨ ਹੋ? ਕਾਲ ਹਾਸ਼ਮੀ ਲਾਅ ਫਰਮ। ਇਹ ਪਰਸਨਲ ਇੰਜਰੀ ਅਤੇ ICPC ਕੇਸਿਸ ਦੇ ਮਾਹਰ ਹਨ। ਡਾਇਨਾਮਿਕ, ਤਜਰਬੇਕਾਰ ਅਤੇ ਪ੍ਰੋਫੈਸ਼ਨਲ ਲਾਇਰਸ ਦੀ ਟੀਮ ਨੂੰ ਅੱਜ ਹੀ ਫ੍ਰੀ ਕੰਸਲਟੇਸ਼ਨ ਲਈ ਕਾਲ ਕਰੋ।
Hi, welcome back to the Harpreet Singh Show, and you're watching Tania's Truth Talk. Today we've got a couple of guests that are veteran exotic dancers. One's name is Victoria. She's been a veteran feature headliner dancer for 10 years. We've got Bridget Perry, known as Becca Banks, who has been an exotic dancer for 6 years. Now, there's been a lot of stuff going on in the news lately about the recruitment of exotic dancers out of the high schools, the colleges, and the universities. It's been all over the news that there's been a lot of incentives that they'll pay their tuition, trying to entice young girls, innocent girls, into exotic dancing. Me, being a former madam, I've had many girls work for me that have come out of exotic dancing. I personally feel that it's a gateway into prostitution, which ultimately leads them down to the pit of despair and to death in many cases, drug addiction, and so on. This is a very unhealthy lifestyle. I've got two guests that are here today that are going to voice their opinions on it, and we've got a lot to offer you today. You're not going to want to miss this. So welcome to the show, ladies. So Victoria, I mean, you and I go back a long ways. I've known you for 13 years.
Yeah, it's been something like that, yes.
Yeah, I actually knew you when I used to run a brothel back in the day, and that was when you were kind of just in the beginning of exotic dancing.
I think it'd only been about 3 years since then, yes.
3 years, yes. And Bridget, I've known you just over a year now.
Yeah.
And you're still involved in exotic dancing. So Victoria, I remember over the years there were many times that you were telling me, I want to get out of this so bad. You know what? I'm going to set a plan and I'm going to be out of it within a year. And as each year would go on, I'd say, Victoria, you're still not out yet. And you kept expressing how it's so hard to get out of exotic dancing. And I come across this with many other girls that are in the industry now. And, you know, you, in my opinion, are one of the less than 2% in the statistics that I have seen that has not ended up drug addicted or into prostitution. You know, but you, from being a veteran dancer for 10 years, you have seen what goes on in behind the scenes in exotic dancing, in the clubs and so on, and what the girls have been through, okay? So now what I want to ask you is there's been a lot of stuff that's been on the news about these strip club owners that are going in and they're recruiting young girls out of high school and college into exotic dancing because they've stopped, the government has stopped the exotic dancer visas from bringing girls in from other countries. So now with a lack of dancers, they're going into the high schools and the colleges and recruiting young girls. What would you say about that? What is your opinion?
I feel that they're extorting girls for their benefit.
Okay.
And being in the industry as long as I have, I just know what it will do to them, what the end result of it is afterwards.
You know, now Victoria, to sit here across from you today, I've known you for 13 years, and you seem like a very well put together and normal girl, but I know over the years of knowing you, there's been times where you've had episodes, you've suffered from depression, and you've explained to me that it was exotic dancing that drove you into the depression. So from your experience as an exotic dancer and what you've seen with other girls, what kind of stuff in regards to that have you seen that you would say that it's not a good thing to be getting young girls into this?
Well, I'd have to say, you know, in the beginning, when I first started dancing, the first 5 years or I pretty much kind of had fun with it a bit, enjoyed making the money,
Yes.
had the...
Now, you were telling me earlier that basically when you were younger, you suffered from low self-esteem, right? So
Yes.
what I find very common with a lot of young girls that get into exotic dancing is I always say it starts in the home. You know, and if we're not raising our kids right, we're not structuring our home life. A lot of these girls that are growing up with insecurities, it's almost like when they get into prostitution or they get into exotic dancing, they're feeling, you know, low self-esteem. So you get on stage, you're all dressed up, you're dancing, and all these men are saying, oh, you're so beautiful, and you're getting this attention, and it gives you like a false sense of empowerment, right?
Yes.
And you just said, like, when you were in that, it made you feel good for the first so many years, but then afterwards, like you explained to me before, it was chipping away at your soul.
Yes.
So can you tell me like how that has affected you?
Well, I think where it is a lot of girls don't realize or choose to not realize that when you get out of the industry, it's hard to sort of feel like you have a place in society.
Yeah, and I remember you telling me that once. You were saying, you know, what am I going to do? Am I going to put on my resume that I was an exotic dancer for 10 years? And I said to you, you know, that's one thing that women need to learn and know when they first get into exotic dancing, that once you've crossed that line, or once you step into prostitution, once you've crossed that line, you've branded yourself.
Well, I'd like to also make clear that I never crossed that line into prostitution. No. However,
yes.
I have seen what girls that have done this.
Right.
You know, because like I said, well, first of all, in the beginning of dancing,
yes.
I struggled with the moral issue of it for the first year or so. I needed to establish in my mind, where I draw the line.
Right.
So where I felt comfortable with what I was doing, so I could wake up every day and feel good about myself.
So if there's young girls that are in college right now, and I'll ask this to you too, Bridget, both of you, if you were going back to college right now and you saw signs of people like nightclub owners coming in and recruiting young girls, from your past experience, what would you say to those young girls that are being enticed by this?
I would tell them they're making a mistake.
I would tell them that it's the worst idea they could possibly get themselves involved in.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Why?
Because once you hit a line where you're like, I hate this, because you will get there, because you get stuck and you hit that line and you're like, I have nothing to show. I can't do anything with my life. I have no education. And basically they're putting those signs up to take girls out of school, because once you go into it, you're not going back to school. You're going to get so addicted to the money. You're going to get addicted to drugs. You're going to maybe get a pimp. You're going to end up being a prostitute, and your whole life is going to get sucked into that.
No, we were talking about this earlier before we're doing the show now, as you were saying, you know, and from my experience too, is the women get into it with the good intention of, oh, this is a good thing. It's going to be paying for my school. But after several months of seeing the money that they're making, they end up dropping out of school, because it's like, well, if I'm go to school for 3 years full time, by the time I get out, I'm only going to be making 60, 80 grand a year. So why go and get the education when I can make triple that, quadruple that as a dancer? So they never end up staying in school.
Yeah.
But it's not even about the money per se, because I was in it for 10 years. For
Yes.
5 years, I struggled trying to get out, and the money just kept deteriorating. It changed a lot over the years.
Yes,
So
I mean, I can relate to that, because many years ago, 20 years ago, I was a headliner feature dancer, and back then it was glamorous. I mean, wow, she's a stripper, you know, and now it's really deteriorated because there's so many girls that are getting into it. They're dropping the standards, they're dropping the prices, and you know, many women are putting their health at risk by slipping into
that's why
prostitution
girls
on the side.
are going to prostitution, I find, is because the money has deteriorated so much. As a dancer, somebody comes along and says, hey, I'll give you this much for a night or whatever, and is also saying, when you're in the club, they're soliciting women as well.
And you've experienced that, and you told me before that many of these men that were soliciting young girls were old enough to be your fathers and your grandfathers, and they were married.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the money has gone down ever since I started dancing, and so I've had to find new ways, new creative ways to try and make money by, whether it be having like 2 or 3 sugar daddies at the same time, or robbing people. Like, I would actually rob customers and like go to their hotel rooms and get the money up front, and then start like barking like a dog. And you know,
would this be because it made you almost develop a hatred?
A hatred towards men too.
What
yeah.
would you say that being in exotic dancing has made your perception towards men be like?
I think they're slobs. Well, the men that go into strip clubs, I think they're all slobs, and I have no problem ripping them off or stealing their wallet. This is like, I wouldn't do it now, but
Yeah.
because I want nothing to do with that world now. But
So it was almost like you were getting back at them.
Yeah.
Now, I remember, Victoria, you had mentioned that there had been many times when you'd be on stage and men were throwing $50 bills at you, $100 bills at you, but while they're doing that, they're calling you a whore and things. And this is very common to be happening to dancers. So has this happened to you a lot? It's not as glamorous, is it?
no.
When you're dancing on stage and being called a whore and people throwing money at you.
Yeah, and
How does that
laughing.
make you feel?
Like
How
a
does-
piece of meat in a steak shop.
Yeah. So what do you,
I think what we're talking about when you're saying how when men come in and they don't treat you very well when you're on stage. I mean, when you say you take them for everything, well, that was the whole idea as far as I was concerned.
Yeah.
You want to come into this club.
yeah.
I'm thinking, well, you're going to come in here, you're going to sit down, and the only thing I'm thinking about is your money. I mean, they came
Yes.
in there for a reason.
Yeah,
So
so
I
so
didn't
basic-
feel a bit guilty taking.
So basically, you're here to use me, so I'm here to use you. I've got something that you want, you've got something that I want. We're going to get back into this more after the commercial break. Tune in after the commercial break, there's more to come.